I think the biggest thing to realize in situations and in economies like this, when people are running away and wanting to get out of real estate, that's when you as a savvy investor should be running towards it. This is where opportunities start coming out. There are less buyers because people are running away scared. You just have to get more creative.
The cost of the money doesn't really matter so long as the project and the deal can support that cost of money. Welcome to the S Factor. I'm Jeff Barker.
I'm Dakota Warkentin, and we are Opinicon Investments. We help investors create wealth through real estate investing, and our success factor is our ability to follow systems from our experience from the last 5 years.
Hello, and welcome to Dakota and Jeff to the S Factor. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. Thank you.
Yeah, excited to be here.
And we are excited to have you as well. We're going to be talking a lot about fix and flips today, and that is something which is, it's like a favorite subject to a lot of Canadians. There are TV channels centered in and around that whole thing, but we're going to be talking to you guys today about that. But before we get there, let's talk about a little about transitioning from corporate life to this life of entrepreneurship.
It's not an easy transition, that's for sure. But we're always happy that we did it. So I have a background in medicine. I was working in a hospital.
Yeah, I was IT professional, so I was always in an office and sitting behind a computer, and that was pretty much my life. Always knew where to be, always knew what to be doing, was kind of told what to do. So that transition into entrepreneurship has been very interesting. I find it was difficult at the very beginning, and it's still a little challenging to make sure that I'm being productive and to be putting myself in the right position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, becoming your own boss is it's great. Like, obviously, it's amazing having control of your schedule.
There's a lot of perks.
And it definitely has a lot of perks. But some days you just don't want to work, and you have to kind of push yourself to do that. So it has its perks, but it has its tough days. But I think it's been amazing so far. So no regrets at all at this point.
Same.
Awesome. Yeah. One thing I've always known is that being self-motivated is so important. And, I've sort of experienced that myself throughout my journey as an entrepreneur. And especially when I speak to other entrepreneurs, I see that being such an important thing. So was there a particular moment, I guess, back in 2018, which sort of drove you guys to say that, you know what, we want to leave the corporate world and sort of jump into real estate? And why real estate in particular?
I guess back in 2018, we didn't think this was going to be a full-time thing. When we first got started, this was another avenue for us to build wealth. It was something that we were going to do sort of on the side, I guess.
Definitely a side hustle. Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, we weren't really thinking that it was going to, I guess, completely consume us as it has, and in the best way possible. And I guess what drove us to real estate is the fact that it's one of the oldest forms of investing. You're investing in tangible assets, and you have a lot of control over what you're investing in. I've always had a hard time kind of wrapping my head around sort of the traditional methods of investing that people think about, like RSPs, stocks, that kind of stuff, because I don't really know.
Crypto.
Well, I guess now crypto, yeah, because I can't really visualize where my money is going. So the thing I loved about real estate is I can see the building I'm investing in. I can really see the numbers. I can run them. I can, project what this is going to look like a little bit easier in the future. So that's what drove me to real estate, is the fact that I can I can see it. I can touch it. I know what I'm investing in. And that part really attracted me.
You can hug it when it's doing really, really well.
Yeah, you can kick it when it's not doing so well. But that's what I think drove me, and I think what drove you as well, Jeff, towards real estate. And yeah, as we got deeper into it, we realized the power of it, and we realized how few people really know about real estate investing. And I think that's where our passion really came through. And the deeper we got into it, the more we realized that it was something we wanted to do full time.
And yeah, we realized that it's something we could actually build a business around. And that's where kind of the entrepreneurship came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. You touched on some very important things right there. One of the things about being that it's a tangible asset. It's not digital. It's not crypto. It's not an NFT. It's not any of those things, right? It's right there. And as you said, it's one of the oldest forms of investment there is, right? So those are very important things that you said. The other things which you have said is about forecasting, is about doing the financials, right? And we're going to be diving deep into that in a little bit. But I guess the first thing I wanted to know was about your first investment, or your very first investment. Did things go exactly according to plan, or?
It was perfect. There was never an issue.
Yeah, I figured as much, right?
No.
So how did it go down?
Oh man. Do you want to start with that one?
So it was an intentional purchase. We bought a bungalow that we were able to easily convert into, well, I'll say easily convert into 2 units. So we could put a legal suite in the basement. It was a large one. We moved into the upper unit. So we were also doing house hacking for this. And then we were living through the renovations in the basement, turning it into an apartment. We learned a lot. At this point in our investing career, I guess, if I back up just a little bit, we had basically been self-taught. I'll say now that we knew enough to be dangerous. We didn't know what we didn't know. And we didn't hire the right contractor for it. We didn't vet properly. It was a friend of mine from high school. He was a contractor, and I said, "Hey, do you know how to build an apartment? Like we're renovating a basement." And he said, "Yeah, absolutely, I can do that." Not really realizing all of the legalities behind it. Working with the city, with the permitting process, getting the regular inspections with the city to come through and make sure all the fire separation is correct and all of that. Just using the right materials. So there was a lot of overspending. There was some work that was done, paid for, and then had to be redone. Like we had to basically take drywall down. Partway through the project, we had to cut a hole in the wall for a window, much larger than we thought we would have had to. So there was a lot of, I guess, backpedaling throughout the process. So it took a lot longer than it should have, and it cost a lot more than it should have.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, we were living there, so we would have had to been paying either rent or a mortgage anyway, and we just had less use of our house essentially.
Yeah, and I think it happens a lot in your first investment. You don't. I think a lot of times you don't know what you don't know going into it, and it's not a project that we necessarily regret. We still actually own the project. It cash flows really well now. It's probably one of our best properties at this point. So, it happens. It wasn't the perfect project. We learned a lot, and I think that's how people get started, right? You kind of have to jump in, know as much as you know, do as much due diligence as you can, and you're going to learn along the way.
Make mistakes, but I think the key to those mistakes is learning from them.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest takeaway I think that we can provide with that is learning from your mistakes, because you will make them. And it's really just a matter of seeing, okay, what could I have done differently? How can I avoid this in the future?
Right. Very well said. So let's talk about a particular project. So I want to basically share with our audience the financials behind it, because we hear a lot about fix and flips and this and that. But I find that the TV shows in particular, not one specifically, but in general, basically, what they do is that they leave a lot of the stuff out the little expenses, and they go with the very on a macro level. They just talk about, okay, this is how much we bought it for, and this is how much we spent on the reno, and this was our profit. But as we
also,
all
it
know,
only took
that
30 minutes to do
yeah,
it.
exactly, and the whole thing is done within a couple of weeks, right? So the thing is that you know what? Obviously, in reality, that is not the case. So please share with us a project, and please, feel free to go into details so that the audience has a good idea about what happens in and around a fix and flip.
Sure. So I guess the starting point with this, we bought a single family home in a very desirable area that had deferred maintenance on it. It was purchased off market, so it wasn't actually on MLS. So we purchased it from a wholesaler. Do we want to just dive right into the numbers? Do you want to? I don't know, should we describe it a little bit more, I guess?
Yeah, I think the big thing, and you mentioned HGTV, which I'm a huge fan of. I watched a lot of HGTV growing up. And I think the thing that they don't talk about enough, because like you mentioned, they say how much they bought the property for, how much it cost to renovate it, and then how much they sold it for. And a big piece that they're missing is that you have to hold this property for however long you have to hold it for. Often it's like 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. So there's a lot of expenses that they don't talk about in that process.
Yeah. So you have your regular bills, just property taxes, your water bill, your gas bill, anything like that, your hydro bill.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you have a mortgage that you're paying, right? So that is, unless you bought it all cash, but typically I think they don't really go into those details. But that's the debt servicing is a big part of it. So you have interest to pay on that mortgage.
Mm-hmm. So when you watch HGTV Town, like watch and see what they're actually giving you, because there are pieces to it, I think, that are often missing.
Yeah.
And we see that a lot, even when people talk about their numbers outside of TV. So it's just something to be aware of when people are presenting numbers to you. So yeah, like Jeff said, we bought the property off market from a wholesaler. So the wholesaler had it, I believe, under contract for $545,000, and then they had a $5,000 fee that they obviously were going to be making off of that. So we were actually able to negotiate a little bit with the wholesaler to make sure that it made sense for us, but we obviously still want to make sure they got paid. Mm-hmm. So the wholesaler got their $5,000 fee. The property was under contract for about $545,000, and we put. The rentals were.
So our purchase was $550.
Yeah, overall $550. So we did a pretty light cosmetic fix of the kitchen, all new flooring. One of the bathrooms needed to be renovated. Paint throughout most
carpet
of the
down to the basement.
Yeah, new lighting throughout the house. So it actually wasn't. There's a lot to do, but a lot of the major stuff was already done. So 2 of the bathrooms had already been renovated, which was great, but the rest of it was really a big cosmetic renovation.
Yeah, the foundation was okay. We didn't have to do anything with that. The roof was actually a metal roof, so it was newly installed and in really good shape. And then the windows were all pretty new as well, so those didn't need to be touched. That's kind of the big ticket items that you'll spend a lot on, but won't give you a huge return on.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the house was that I think they had tried to start to renovate it, but we're doing the kind of DIY stuff with ripping stuff down. So I think that's why it kind of looked, I guess, less desirable to go on market.
And you'll see that in the before pictures for this. You'll see that there's like paint patch marks and stuff like that throughout the before. That wasn't us touching anything at all. That was the state of the home when we bought it.
Yeah. So we probably put about $110,000 into the actual renovation cost. The kicker with this project, and this is something that we talk about a lot with newer investors who are scared, I guess, to spend money on money. We had a mortgage on the property that was at 15.5%.
15.5%.
So that's a heavy mortgage.
And this is when you could go into get a regular big bank mortgage of 1.5%, 2%, right? This is 2021 when this was happening. So interest rates were at an all-time low. And we walked into this property with a 15.5% mortgage.
Yeah. So obviously heftier holding costs from that perspective, because you have to pay that mortgage as you're holding it. And then with bills and like snow removal, because it was winter, that kind of stuff, our holding costs were around $65,000. And our sale for that one, this has been our biggest flip so far. We actually set a record for the community for this flip. The sale was $951,000. So we made like 225-ish thousand on it. So it was a huge sale for us. Like I said, we set a record for the community, and we actually have an investor friend that got a property in that community appraised after we sold this, and her appraisal came back higher because of the sale of this property, which was a lot of fun.
That was a nice little bonus.
But yeah, it was a big project for us, but it's one that we use as an example often because we did spend so much money on the money we were borrowing. It was a heavy mortgage, but had we not been willing to spend that money on that mortgage, we wouldn't have made the amount we had made on this flip. So it's an example that we use often to try to teach people, like, don't be afraid of the cost of money if the project can handle it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Congratulations, guys. That was a really good project and a really successful one at that, right? How long did it take for the time you closed till the time you actually sold it?
I believe it took about 2.5, 3 months by the end.
Yeah, it was 2.5 for renovations.
Yeah.
And the offer that we got that was $951 had a very fast closing on it.
Yeah.
Very fast for just like regular on market closing. It was
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a 2-week closing on
period.
it.
Oh,
almost unheard of on like a regular MLS deal.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So one thing you have mentioned, and I think this is what will be new for a lot of people, is that people think about mortgage as with, the regular banks. But you are talking about a private lender here, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So this actually leads me to a question I want to know a little bit about, is that what are some of the best ways to work with private lenders? Because there is a bit of misconception, right? A lot of people don't know a lot about working with private lenders, number one. Number two is that, from my understanding, that these loans are usually interest only, like nothing gets paid down on your principal, right? So these are all expenses. So
some of them are balloon payments at the end. Actually, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have that monthly cost to it.
Right. Okay, perfect. So tell us a bit about, your strategies on working with private lenders.
The biggest thing for us has been relationships.
Yeah.
Because these people are investing normally big sums of money into your project. So building those relationships and that trust is really important because they're trusting you with a large chunk of money.
Yeah,
so
they're investing in your ability to actually complete this project as well, and to complete it to hit your after repair value and to do it in the timeline that you've essentially said that you can do it.
Yeah. So that's what we've really strived to do with any of our investors. Like, we have equity partners, we have passive investors, and either way, the biggest thing that you have to work on is your relationships with these people, because they're putting a lot of trust in you, and then making sure you know your project. So knowing the numbers for the project, knowing approximately exactly, I guess, how much it's going to cost to do everything. Obviously, you run into things as you're doing it, but showing, like, if I run into things, I have this budget as extra just in case.
Plan, yeah.
So knowing your numbers, knowing the best probable and worst case scenarios, being able to present those things, and knowing how you're going to get out of the property and having multiple exit strategies. These are all going to help you present your deal to a private investor. And they're going to feel a lot more comfortable investing in you because you've put that much time into knowing your project that well and knowing exactly how you're going to get out of it. And if that doesn't work, what are your other options? So building relationships and knowing your project are extremely important.
Yeah, not only building a relationship with the private lender, but building a relationship with a broker, because a lot of people will say, well, how do I find a private lender? Honestly, most often you'll find them through an investor-focused mortgage broker, because they will have relationships already and they can also vet you as an investor and kind of facilitate that that mortgage between you and the private lender.
Very good point, Jeff. I think that's one of the things that I was going to ask next, is that what is the best way to build that relationship with a private lender, how to find a private lender. So you said investment focused mortgage brokers are your best ways. Okay, perfect. Let's talk about contractors. I think anyone who owns their own property, they have had some kind of experience dealing with contractors, whether it's the smallest thing you need to fix in your kitchen, washroom, whatever it is, to much larger projects. So you have to have very good relationship with your contractors. As you said, in your very first project, it was your high school friend, and the thing is that he probably wasn't the right person for that particular project, right? So for new investors or for anyone who's thinking about getting into this, what are some of the ways that you can actually vet your contractors to begin with, right? And then how do you actually manage that relationship going forward and during that project?
So vetting your contractor is extremely important, and doing it properly and not, skipping a step or saying, I think we trust this guy, we can keep going. Do your full vetting process before we start talking about how to do it. Do your full vetting process no matter what. It's super important. We have our share of great contractors that we love working with, and we have our share of very unfortunate experiences with contractors, and it's going to happen no matter what. That's a part of the real estate business. Even though you go through your vetting process, you're still going to work with people that maybe are great contractors but weren't right for that project, or just aren't great contractors, period.
Yeah, maybe they looked good on paper and they just weren't overall, or lied about it. I don't know, maybe the references weren't actual references.
Yeah.
It can be a difficult process for sure. And that's why it's crucial to go through there's multiple steps for vetting, and to make sure that you go through all of those.
Yeah. So the way that we when we started, the way that we found our contractors, and we like to have a couple, because you're going to have contractors that are busy and, maybe contractor A can't do the project, but you have your contractor B that can do it. So have multiple that you're able to contact and get quotes from. But the way we did it initially was there was an Ottawa contractor Facebook group, and we just kind of did out a call and said, hey, this is the project we're doing. And it's important, make sure you're saying which project you're doing, because different contractors are good for different things. Mm-hmm. So this is the project we're doing. We're looking for contractors. Do you have any recommendations? And we sort of went through and saw who was getting recommended more often. And then we took those names and we actually started the vetting process. So we did sort of a first contact with them to book an appointment. And from there, we did an actual interview process. So we have a list of questions that we go through with our contractors, and we don't miss any of them. We've had experiences where we missed some of them and bit us in the butt, so we don't miss any of our questions. Mm-hmm. Making sure, seeing what projects they've done before, looking for pictures of the projects they've done before, looking at previous contracts, how they structure their payments.
How many employees do they have within their company? Are they actually a corporation or a registered business, or are they just doing this under their personal name?
How do they get paid? If you're writing checks to them personally, get a little bit skeptical. If you're writing checks to a company, That's much better. Do they have proper insurance? You really just want to make sure that they have a good business model. They're actually running under a business. They're legitimate. You can Google them. That's what we did after. We took their name, their company, Googled them, looked at their reviews. And then we also, of course, we do call references. I'm always I take the references with a grain of salt, because you never know who's on the other end of that line.
It could be their friend. It could be their mother. You never know.
Yeah. So we actually don't weigh that extremely heavily, because I don't know who I'm actually talking to. So really the biggest thing is the interview, and then doing your Google research afterwards to make sure that they're legitimate.
And if you can meet them on site for one of their projects, then you can see, like, is the site clean? Are there multiple workers there? Are people actually there and working? Or are you and the contractor kind of the only people there? If you're in the middle of the day, then there might be some issues, but yeah, it's a big process. And you just need to do it very carefully.
And then listen to your gut is another thing.
Yes.
If someone looks great on paper, but you meet them and you're walking through a property and something feels off, listen to that. It's really important.
Got it. Thank you so much. So having a checklist is very important, you would say.
Yes.
Yeah. Treat it like an interview, like as if you're going in, because they're almost applying for a job with you, right?
You're hiring them.
Yeah.
And treat it like that.
So interview them as if they were coming on as an employee, the same way that if you were interviewing for a job, do the same thing.
All right. Got it. Most of the properties that you have worked on, are they in and around the Ottawa area?
Yeah.
Yeah. Our big focus for the last couple of years, especially with our flipping, has been in sort of Ottawa proper. Now we've actually moved on to looking at, not moved on, but we've added, I guess, looking at multifamily properties. So looking at more of the apartment buildings. And that's within the Ottawa Valley and then in Northern Ontario as well.
Okay, perfect. How do you go about selecting your properties?
So this is something that, again, we are refining right now because
finding a niche for the properties that would fit best with our goals.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's really a blanket statement that we can make that will give listeners what they want.
Yeah. But I think there are a couple of things though that you can look at when you're looking at a property. It depends on what type of property you're looking for. If you're looking for a flip, I'd say stick to areas that are desirable, but pick the ugly duckling house on the street. So when you're going to sell that flip, no matter what the conditions are of the market, someone's going to want to buy it. So we like to stick to now areas that are very desirable, no matter what.
Growing neighborhoods and just desirable overall.
Yeah. And then for our multifamily, we look at the economy and what's happening in that town. So is the town growing? Is the town dying? What's supporting that town? Like, is it a small mining town that if the mine dries up, the town's not going to exist anymore? Or do they have multiple different sources of income for the city? Is it close to a major center? So if you're looking outside of Ottawa, how close is it to Ottawa? Is it on a major highway? So really, you want to make sure that the town is growing or stable, not dying. So looking at those, the factors in the economy that would indicate that.
All right, perfect. A lot of valuable information right there. And I think anyone who listens to this would definitely appreciate that. So you talked a little bit about the economy and the present situations. So with interest rates going up all the time and for the foreseeable future, actually, and the way that, we're talking about a looming recession, but in my opinion, the recession is already here. So the thing is that how are you guys doing? And what are some of the steps you're taking in terms of future investments?
So I think one of the reasons on why we wanted to talk about that one specific project and get the numbers for that one is because of the interest rate and the interest rate on that project being extremely high for the time that we were in, still high for today, and the fact that the interest rates are rising now. So speaking from an investment point of view, really it goes back to what we said before. The cost of the money doesn't really matter so long as the project and the deal can support that cost of money, right? So if you're looking at it from an investment point of view, just run your numbers with the current interest rates, maybe give yourself a buffer. So if the interest rates are at 6%, maybe run them at 7%. And as long as you're able, the deal still works. What does it matter if what the cost of money is, as long as it works, right? And that's kind of the point that we see is missed a lot. And that's why we wanted to focus on that with kind of our discussions today.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing to realize in situations and in economies like this, when people are running away and wanting to get out of real estate, that's when you as a savvy investor should be running towards it. This is where opportunities start coming out. There are less buyers because people are running away scared. You just have to get more creative. So there are, it is tough right now to finance, for example, our multifamily deals, because the financing makes it very tough for the building to cash flow. But then you start thinking about, okay, how else can I buy this property? And this is where the discussion around mortgages becomes really important, because you don't have to go with an A lender. You don't have to go with like that top tier, what people would determine, I guess, is like the best product out there with the best interest rates. Look at other options. How else can you finance that building? Because there are so many other ways you can do it other than going to your major banks. So you just have to get a bit more creative. You have to really run your numbers and make sure that your numbers are right. And yeah, like still invest. It's still a good time to invest. You just might have to change how you're approaching it.
Yeah, I think you touched on something. There's a common saying: when others are fearful, be greedy, and when others are greedy, be fearful. Mm-hmm. As a savvy investor.
Very nicely said. And I think that would give some inspiration or encouragement, at least, to new investors, people who are looking to get into this business, and not being afraid, because right now, there's fear everywhere you go. Thank you for all the information you've given. If people wanted to learn more about you guys, what is the best way to find you?
Social media, I think, is probably the best way. We are on Facebook and Instagram, Opinicon Investments. Maybe you can put it on the screen because often the spelling is difficult. But
yeah, please reach out to us. We love talking to experienced investors as well, but we love talking to new investors. We were there, a couple of years ago. We know how scary it is to get into it. And it's one of my favorite things, talking to a new investor, seeing them get into their first project and seeing their eyes open up to the potential. So please reach out to us. We love to connect. We love to chat. We can hop on a Zoom call if you have questions or anything. Please reach out.
Awesome. And all those links will be in the description below. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, they can definitely do that. Thank you again for your time today. I do appreciate that. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you for having us.